Why was the sheriff staring at a body 847 yards from her door? The October morning was cold, the kind of cold that turns breath into ghosts. Sheriff Tom Morrison stood over the body, studying it the way you study something that doesn't make sense. Single bullet wound, center mass, through the heart, clean entry, cleaner exit. The kind of shot that whispered one word: training. He lowered his scope and looked up toward the cabin on the ridge, up toward the woman standing on the porch like she'd been carved from the mountain itself. Alina Blackwood, 27 years old, 5'3", blonde hair pulled back tight. She looked like someone who should be teaching children their ABCs, not dropping men at distances most people couldn't even see. But there she stood, arms crossed, watching him, waiting. His radio crackled. "Sheriff, we got another one, quarter-mile west. Same MO, single shot, long range." Morrison's stomach dropped. One body was a situation. Two bodies was something else entirely. He started the long walk up to her cabin. Each step felt heavier than the last. "Self-defense." Her voice cut through the mountain air before he even reached the steps. Flat, certain. The voice of someone stating a fact, not making an argument. "They had rifles, they were on my property, they were warned." Morrison stopped at the bottom of the stairs. 18 years as sheriff had taught him things: how to read a lie, how to spot guilt, how to know when someone's story was rehearsed. This wasn't any of those things. "Miss Blackwood," he said carefully, "I'm going to need you to walk me through the last 96 hours. Elle nodded once, sharp, military. "You're going to want coffee for this, Sheriff. It's a long story." She turned and walked inside. Morrison followed, knowing his entire week was about to get complicated. What he didn't know was that the next few days would resurrect secrets buried for 50 years, challenge everything his town believed about heroes, and prove that the deadliest sniper in Montana wasn't the legend they all worshipped. It was the girl they'd all dismissed 96 hours earlier. The one they'd looked through like glass. Inside, Elle poured coffee, strong, black, the kind that cleared fog from your mind whether you wanted it to or not. Morrison sat at her table, simple, clean, everything in its place. The cabin smelled like pine and gunpowder and something else. Discipline, order, the smell of someone who'd lived by structure so long it had become part of their bones. 96 hours ago, Elle said, I went to a town meeting, water rights, boundary disputes, standard Montana business. She paused, took a sip of coffee, her hands were steady, completely steady. I wasn't planning to speak, wasn't planning to be noticed. I just wanted to hear about the access road that crosses my northern boundary. She set the cup down. Then Colonel Thorne stood up. Morrison knew Thorne. Everyone knew Thorne. Marine Force Recon, 25 years of service, 89 confirmed kills across a career that had become legend. Copper Ridge treated him like visiting royalty, their connection to something larger than cattle prices and hay. He wanted to address something, Elle continued. Her voice stayed flat, but Morrison heard something underneath it, something cold. About new people moving into the valley, about standards, about who belonged here. What did he say? He said a lot of things. Elle looked out the window. He said he'd heard a former Navy SEAL bought the old Patterson place. That's me. He thanked me for my service. Then he explained that SEAL training used to be the hardest thing in the world. Used to be that only the toughest, most capable warriors made it through. She turned back to Morrison. Her eyes were blue, ice chip blue, the kind of blue that made you forget she was barely 5'3". Then he said they're lowering standards now. Political correctness. That they're graduating people who can't carry a full combat load. That they're graduating 100-pound girls who couldn't drag a wounded man to safety if their lives depended on it. Morrison winced. He'd been at that meeting. He'd heard it. Had felt uncomfortable but hadn't said anything, because you didn't contradict Iron Thorn, not in Copper Ridge. In front of the whole town, Elle said quietly, He told me I probably did my best, but that SEAL standards aren't what they used to be, that the Valley respects real warriors, the kind forged in real combat under real standards. She picked up her coffee again, took another sip, still steady. "Did you respond?" Morrison asked. "No, I learned a long time ago that arguing only makes it worse. You don't win by talking, you win by doing." She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "And I hadn't done anything yet that these people could see." Morrison shifted in his chair. "Elle, what does this have to do with the bodies on your property?" "Everything, Sheriff, everything." She stood and walked to the window. Outside, the mountain stretched away in all directions. 8,400 acres of Montana wilderness. Beautiful, remote, the kind of place where you go to escape the world. Or where the world comes to find you anyway. "I bought this land 8 months ago," Elle said, "after 6 years in the Navy, after 47 combat missions, after Afghanistan and Syria and places I can't talk about. I bought it because I was tired, because I'd carried enough wounded teammates, because I'd made enough impossible shots, because I wanted peace." She turned to face him. "But peace isn't something you find, Sheriff. It's something you build, and sometimes you have to defend it." Morrison felt a chill that had nothing to do with the October morning. 3 days ago," Elle continued, "I was checking my northern fence line. That's when I found the first signs. Boot prints, fresh. Multiple sets, heavy tread patterns, military grade." "Hikers," Morrison suggested, already knowing the answer. "Hikers don't move in tactical formations. They don't space themselves at optimal intervals for covering fire. They don't avoid game trails and stick to the hardest terrain." She shook her head. "These weren't hikers, Sheriff. These were operators." "What would operators want with your property?" "That's what I needed to find out." Elle walked to a cabinet and pulled out a map, spread it on the table. Morrison recognized the contours, her property, but there were markings on it, annotations, coordinates. "I spent the next day tracking them, found their observation post, found their equipment cache, found their communications setup." She pointed to a spot on the map. "They were professionals, well-trained, well-equipped, running some kind of operation on my land." "Did you call it in?" Elle looked at him, really looked at him. "Sheriff, when you've spent 6 years in special operations, you learn something. You learn that when unknown military personnel are conducting unauthorized operations on American soil, calling the local sheriff might not be your first move." Morrison felt his jaw tighten. "What was your first move?" "Reconnaissance. I needed to understand what they were doing before I decided how to respond." She traced a line on the map with her finger. "They were focused on this area, old logging road. Hasn't been used in decades, but there's something there, something buried." "What?" "I didn't know, not then, so I waited, watched, gathered intel, did what I was trained to do." Morrison leaned forward. "Elle, you're telling me you ran a solo surveillance operation on armed intruders instead of calling law enforcement?" "I'm telling you I used my judgment. And my judgment said these men were looking for something specific, something important enough to risk illegal operations on private property." She pulled out another piece of paper, photographs printed from a trail camera. "I set up cameras along their route, got faces, got equipment, got enough to run through some databases I still have access to." Morrison picked up one of the photos. 3 men, tactical gear, rifles. They looked professional, dangerous. "Who are they?" "Mercenaries, private military contractors, but here's the interesting part." Elle tapped the photo. "They were hired 6 weeks ago by a shell company, which is owned by another shell company, which eventually traces back to a man named Marcus Petrov, Russian national, based in Vladivostok, specializes in Cold War artifacts." Morrison's head was spinning. Cold War artifacts in Montana. "That's what I thought, so I did more digging. Went through old land records, found something interesting. From 1972 to 1974, the federal government leased 300 acres of what's now my property. Department of Energy. Project classified. No details. She pulled out more papers. Old. Yellowed. Copies of documents that looked like they'd been buried in filing cabinets for half a century. After the lease ended, the land went back to private ownership, changed hands a few times, eventually became the Patterson place, then became mine. Elle looked at Morrison. But whatever the government was doing here in the 70s, they left something behind, something buried, something someone wants badly enough to hire mercenaries. Morrison sat back in his chair. This was way beyond water rights and boundary disputes. The second night, Elle said, I watched them dig. They'd found the site, old concrete bunker, sealed. They brought in equipment, ground-penetrating radar, excavation tools. They weren't trying to hide their activity anymore. They thought they were alone out here. They thought wrong. They thought wrong, Elle agreed. I called in some favors, old teammates, people who know people, got confirmation within 6 hours. There's a legacy site on my property. Cold War era. Department of Energy lost track of it during bureaucratic shuffling in the 80s, but it's documented, classified, and very much still dangerous. What's in it? Elle's face hardened. Enriched uranium, small amount, research grade, but enough to make a dirty bomb if someone knew what they were doing, enough to contaminate a major city if dispersed properly, enough to kill thousands. The cabin suddenly felt very small, very quiet. So these mercenaries, Morrison said slowly, they're trying to steal nuclear material. Not trying, Sheriff. They broke the seals yesterday morning. They have it, or they had it. Elle's eyes were ice again. That's when I made my decision. Morrison's throat was dry. What decision? That some lines can't be crossed. That some threats can't be allowed to leave. That some shots have to be taken, no matter what comes after. She walked to another cabinet, opened it. Inside was a rifle, custom build, precision optics, the kind of weapon that cost more than most people's cars. I gave them a chance, Elle said quietly. Set up position, called out on a megaphone, told them to put down their weapons, told them they were surrounded, told them law enforcement was inbound. Were they? No, but they didn't know that. She ran her hand along the rifle's barrel. They opened fire toward my voice, suppressing fire, professional, disciplined. They weren't planning to surrender. Morrison could see where this was going. So I made the shots, Elle said simply. Center mass, clean, quick, humane as I could make it under the circumstances. 847 yards for the first one. 792 for the second, 653 for the third. 3 men. 3 men, all armed, all engaged in the act of stealing weapons-grade nuclear material from a federal site. She met his eyes, all dead before they hit the ground. The clock on the wall ticked, once, twice, 10 times. Morrison finally found his voice. Elle, you're talking about a triple homicide. I'm talking about stopping a nuclear theft. I'm talking about protecting this valley, this state, this country. Her voice was steel. I'm talking about doing my job, Sheriff, the one I was trained for, the one I thought I'd left behind. She poured more coffee, her hands still steady. After the shots, I secured the site, recovered the material, sealed it back in the bunker using their own equipment. Then I called the Department of Energy's emergency line. Took them 8 hours to get a team here, but they came. Full hazmat, full security, full investigation. When was this? Yesterday. While you were dealing with that drunk and disorderly at Murphy's bar, I was handing over weapons-grade uranium to federal agents. Morrison felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. Why didn't you call me? Because by the time it was safe to call you, Sheriff, the feds had already secured the scene, already taken statements, already verified everything I told you. Elle smiled slightly. You're getting the story now because they cleared me to brief local law enforcement, Otherwise, I'd still be sitting on it. Morrison stood up, paced to the window, looked out at the mountain that had just become a lot more complicated. So the bodies, he said, they're foreign nationals engaged in nuclear theft on American soil, shot in self-defense during an active federal investigation. That's the official finding, yes. And you're what? A cooperating witness. I'm a consultant. Department of Energy just offered me a contract. Legacy weapons recovery. Turns out there are sites like this all over the country, lost during bureaucratic transitions, forgotten in filing cabinets, still dangerous, still vulnerable. Elle joined him at the window. They need people who can operate alone, who can assess threats, who can make hard decisions when those threats materialize. Morrison shook his head slowly. You came here for peace. I came here thinking I wanted peace, but I learned something these last few days. She looked at him. I'm not built for peace, Sheriff. I'm built for missions, for purpose, for standing when standing is needed. Even if standing means killing. Especially then. They stood in silence for a long moment. Outside, the mountain looked the same as it always had. Beautiful, peaceful, serene. But Morrison knew now what it really was. A fortress, defended by someone who could make shots most people couldn't even imagine. What happens now? He asked. Now the feds finish their investigation, clean up the site, document everything. Then it gets classified and forgotten. Elle turned from the window, and I go back to living my life, until the next mission, until the next threat, until someone else crosses a line that can't be crossed. The town's going to ask questions. Let them ask. The official story is vague enough. Federal investigation. No local involvement required. My name stays out of it unless I choose otherwise. Morrison picked up his hat. And Colonel Thorne, he's going to hear about this eventually. For the first time, Elle's expression shifted. Something like satisfaction, like vindication. Let him hear. Let the whole town hear. I'm not the one who needs proving anymore, Sheriff. I did what needed doing, made the shots that mattered, stopped a threat that would have killed thousands. She walked him to the door. And I did it all while being a 100-pound girl who supposedly couldn't drag a wounded man to safety. Morrison stepped out onto the porch. The morning had warmed slightly. The bodies were still down there, still waiting for federal cleanup crews. Elle, he said, turning back, what you did, it was the right call, but it was also the hardest call. The hardest calls usually are, Sheriff. That's why they need people willing to make them. He nodded and started down the steps. Halfway down, he stopped. One more thing, those shots. 800+ yards, moving targets under pressure. That's not just training, that's exceptional. Elle leaned against the doorframe. Colonel Thorne has 89 confirmed kills over 25 years. I have 47 over 6 years. But here's what he doesn't know, she smiled. 15 of mine were over 1,000 yards, in combat, under fire, with teammates' lives depending on accuracy. Morrison felt his eyebrows raise. I didn't come here to prove anything, Elle continued. I came here to escape, but sometimes escape finds you anyway. And when it does, you handle it, with the skills you have, with the training that doesn't fade, with the certainty that when you pull the trigger, the shot connects. You could have told him that, at the meeting, when he questioned your capabilities. I could have, but words are cheap, Sheriff, actions speak, and now my actions have spoken, loudly enough that everyone will hear. Morrison tipped his hat and continued down the mountain. Behind him, Elle watched from the porch. Small, quiet, unassuming. The most dangerous person in Copper Ridge. And nobody had even known. But what happened next, nobody expected. The federal team arrived 3 hours after Morrison left. Black SUVs, hazmat suits, enough equipment to fill a small warehouse. Elle watched them work from her porch, sipping coffee, making herself available but not intrusive. The lead agent was a woman, late 40s, dark hair pulled back in a bun that was probably regulations but looked severe. She climbed up to the cabin around noon, pulling off her hazmat gloves as she approached. "Miss Blackwood, I'm Agent Sarah Chen, Department of Energy, Office of Secure Transportation." Elle shook her hand. Firm grip, no nonsense. The handshake of someone who'd earned their position through competence, not politics. "Agent Chen, coffee." "Please." They sat at the same table where Elle had briefed Morrison, but this conversation felt different. Not an explanation, a debrief between professionals. "Your assessment was accurate," Chen said. "Site Yankee 12, Commission 1972, research grade enriched uranium, forgotten during the Reagan-era reorganization, fell through bureaucratic cracks." She sipped the coffee. "We've been trying to locate it for 6 years." "And I found it by accident," Elle said. "You found it because you recognized tactical movement patterns on your property. Most people would have called it in and created a circus. You ran reconnaissance, gathered intel, made an informed decision." Chen set down her cup. "That's not accident. That's exceptional operational judgment." Elle didn't respond, just waited. "The 3 targets," Chen continued. "Petrov's people. We've been tracking them for 18 months. They're good, very good. Hit 4 sites across the former Soviet Union, 2 in Kazakhstan, 1 in Ukraine, 1 in Moldova. Recovered enough material to build 3 dirty bombs." Elle felt her stomach tighten. They were planning something big. They were planning multiple attacks, coordinated, simultaneous, major cities across Europe and North America. Chen's face was grim. "You didn't just stop a theft, Miss Blackwood. You stopped a terrorist cell that's been in operation for 2 years." The weight of that settled over the cabin like snow. "How many people?" Elle asked quietly. "Best estimate if they'd succeeded. Conservative estimate 20,000 casualties. Optimistic estimate 50,000. Chen met her eyes. "You saved lives yesterday, a lot of lives." Elle looked out the window, tried to process that number. 20,000, 50,000. Numbers so big they stopped meaning anything, stopped being people and became statistics. "The shots," Chen said. "I read your statement, 800 plus yards, 3 targets under stress. That's world-class marksmanship." "I had good training." "You had standard SEAL sniper training. This was beyond standard." Chen pulled out a tablet, brought up a file. "I pulled your service record, 47 combat missions, 15 confirmed kills over 1,000 yards, 0 teammates lost while you were providing overwatch. You're in the top 1% of military snipers, active or retired." Elle shifted uncomfortably. She didn't like praise, didn't trust it. Praise was how people set you up for failure, how they raised expectations you couldn't meet. "I'm good at my job," she said simply. "Was good at my job." "Are good at your job," Chen corrected, "because I'm here to offer you a new job." There it was, the real reason for the personal visit, the careful assessment, the review of capabilities. "Legacy weapons recovery," Chen continued. "It's a new unit, cross-agency, DOE, FBI, Defense Threat Reduction Agency. Our mission is locating and securing lost Cold War sites. There are hundreds of them, maybe thousands, scattered across the country, forgotten, vulnerable. And you need operators. We need people who can work alone, who can assess threats, who can make decisions without backup." Chen leaned forward. "We need people who can do what you did yesterday, recognize danger, respond appropriately, secure assets, and do it all without creating an international incident." Elle considered this, thought about the peace she'd wanted, the isolation she'd craved, the quiet life she'd tried to build. Then she thought about 20,000 people, 50,000 people, walking through their cities, living their lives, not knowing how close they'd come to dying. "What would it involve?" she asked. "Contract work, consulting basis. We identify a site, brief you on the threat, you assess. If there's active danger, you neutralize it. If it's just lost material, you secure it until our teams arrive." Chen pulled out a contract, actual paper, old school. Pay is excellent, benefits are better, and you stay based here. We come to you, not the other way around. Elle took the contract, scanned it. The numbers were impressive, more than impressive. The kind of money that meant she'd never worry about property taxes or equipment maintenance again. But it wasn't about the money. I came here to get away from this life, Elle said quietly. From the missions, the danger, the decisions. I know, and if you want to say no, walk away, live your life, you've earned that right, Chen stood. But I think you learned something yesterday. I think you learned that you're not built for pure isolation. You're built for purpose, for missions that matter, for standing when others can't. Elle looked at the contract, looked at the mountain beyond her window, looked at the life she'd built and the life she'd left behind. Can I think about it? Take 48 hours. After that, the offer expires. Chen headed for the door. But Miss Blackwood, people like us, we don't retire, we just find new battles, better battles, ones we choose instead of ones we're ordered into. She left. Elle sat with the contract for a long time, reading it, considering it, feeling the weight of it. Outside, the federal team packed up, sealed the site, made the mountain safe again. But Elle knew something now. The mountain had never been safe. The world had never been safe. Safety was an illusion, a comfortable lie people told themselves so they could sleep at night. The truth was harder. The truth was that danger was always there, always waiting. And the only thing standing between danger and catastrophe was people willing to stand, people willing to act, people willing to make the hard calls when everyone else was busy pretending threats didn't exist. Her phone buzzed, text message, unknown number. Heard about Montana. Impressive work. If you need anything, call Marcus. Marcus, her old team leader, the man who trained her, believed in her, defended her when others doubted. She smiled, typed back. Thanks, miss the work sometimes. His response was immediate. The work never leaves you, it just waits until you're ready. Elle set down the phone, looked at the contract again, thought about peace and purpose and the difference between what you want and what you need. She didn't sign it, not yet, but she didn't throw it away either. The town meeting 2 days later was different. Elle walked into the Copper Ridge Community Hall and felt the shift immediately. People looked at her, actually looked, not through her, not past her, at her. Sheriff Morrison nodded from his seat. Mrs. Patterson smiled. Even old Jim Carter, who'd never smiled at anyone in his life, gave her a respectful nod. Something had changed. Word had spread. The vague way word spreads in small towns. No details, just enough to know something significant had happened. Something involving the federal government. Something involving the quiet woman who'd bought the Patterson place. Elle took her seat in the back row, same seat as before, but this time she wasn't trying to be invisible. Colonel Thorne was already there, front row, same seat he always took, the position of honor, the place reserved for the town's resident legend. The meeting started. Water rights, boundary disputes, the same mundane business that kept rural communities functional. Elle listened with half her attention, the other half was on Thorne. He kept glancing back, not obvious, just little looks, assessing, curious, maybe even uncertain. Halfway through the meeting, Sheriff Morrison stood. Before we continue, I want to address something. Some of you heard there was federal activity on the Blackwood property this week. I want to confirm that's true. There was an investigation. I can't provide details because it's classified, but I can tell you this. He looked directly at Elle. Miss Blackwood provided crucial assistance to federal authorities. Her actions directly contributed to the successful resolution of a significant threat. The details are sealed, but the Department of Energy asked me to convey their thanks to her and to this community. Murmurs rippled through the room, questions, speculation, curiosity. I can't say more, Morrison continued, But I wanted you all to know that we're lucky to have someone of Miss Blackwood's capabilities living in our valley. Very lucky." He sat down. The meeting continued, but the energy had shifted. Eyes kept finding Elle. Respectful, appreciative, curious. When the meeting ended, people approached her. Not everyone, not immediately, but gradually, small conversations, thank yous, questions she couldn't answer, respect she hadn't sought but quietly accepted. Colonel Thorne watched from across the room. Then slowly he walked over. Elle stood, old habits. You stood when a senior officer approached. "Miss Blackwood," Thorne said. His voice was different. The grandfatherly condescension was gone. "I heard there was some excitement on your property." "Some," Elle agreed. "Morrison says you handled it well." "I handled it." They stood in silence for a moment. Two warriors, two generations, both knowing that words meant nothing compared to actions. "I said some things," Thorne began. "At the last meeting, things I shouldn't have said." "You said what you believed." "I said what I thought I believed, but I was wrong about standards, about capabilities, about you." He met her eyes. "I let my pride and my prejudices cloud my judgment. That's not how warriors should behave, and I apologize." Elle studied him, looked for insincerity, found none. "Apology accepted, Colonel." "I'd like to buy you a drink," Thorne said. "If you're willing, compare notes. I'd be interested to hear about modern SEAL training, how it's changed, what they're teaching now." "It hasn't changed as much as you think. The standards are still brutal, still unforgiving, still designed to break people." "But not you." "Not me," Elle agreed. "I'm hard to break." Thorne smiled, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. "I can see that. Murphy's Bar, Friday night." "I'll be there." He nodded and walked away. Elle watched him go, felt something shift inside her, not forgiveness exactly, but acceptance, understanding, the recognition that even legends could grow, could change, could admit when they were wrong. Outside, the Montana night was cold, stars brilliant against black sky. Elle walked to her truck, found someone waiting. Young woman, early 20s, nervous but determined. "Miss Blackwood, I'm Emma Morrison, the sheriff's daughter." Elle recognized the name. Morrison had mentioned her once. Smart girl, strong, thinking about military service. "Emma, what can I do for you?" "I wanted to ask you something about the Navy, about SEAL training." Emma shifted her weight. "I've been thinking about trying, but everyone says it's too hard, that women can't really make it through, that the standards are different." Elle felt an old anger stir. The same anger she'd felt at the town meeting. The same anger that had driven her through Bud S when every instructor expected her to quit. "The standards aren't different," Elle said quietly. "They're brutal, unforgiving, designed to break everyone who attempts them, but they're not impossible, not if you want it badly enough." "Did you ever want to quit?" "Every day, sometimes every hour." Elle leaned against her truck. "Bud S is designed to make you quit. They push you past what you think is possible, past what your body can handle, past what your mind can endure, and then they push you further." "So how did you make it?" "I made a promise to myself, before I started, that I'd rather die than quit, and I kept that promise, through hypothermia, through stress fractures, through instructors who told me I didn't belong, through teammates who doubted I could keep up." She looked at Emma. "I kept that promise because promises are the only thing that matters when everything else falls apart." Emma absorbed this. If I train, will you help me?" Elle considered, thought about mentorship, about passing forward what had been passed to her, about creating something that lasted beyond any single mission or single moment. "Every Saturday morning," Elle said. 0600, my place. Bring running shoes and the willingness to suffer." "I'll be there." "And Emma, when you show up ready, not interested, not curious, ready. Because I won't train someone who's just testing the waters. I'll only train someone who's committed." Emma straightened, something military in the movement. I'm committed. Then I'll see you Saturday. Emma walked away. Elle watched her go, felt something warm spread through her chest. Legacy, not through blood, but through knowledge, through skills passed forward, through the next generation prepared to carry what mattered. She drove home, up the mountain, to the cabin that had become a fortress, to the land that had tested her and changed her and revealed who she really was. Inside, the contract sat on her table, unsigned, waiting. Elle picked it up, read it again, thought about peace and purpose and the difference between what you want and what you need. Then she signed it. Not because she needed the money, not because she needed the validation, but because she understood now what she really was. Not someone running from war, someone choosing her battles, someone standing when standing mattered, someone making shots that counted. She took a photo of the signed contract, sent it to Agent Chen. The response came within minutes. Welcome to the team, first briefing Monday, Kazakhstan, similar situation. Elle set down her phone, walked to her gun safe, started preparing her equipment, cleaning her rifle, checking her gear, the ritual that had sustained her through 6 years of combat. But this felt different, not orders from above, not missions she had to accept, choices she made, battles she selected, purpose she defined. Outside, the mountain settled into night, peaceful, quiet, beautiful. But Elle knew the truth now. Peace wasn't the absence of danger. Peace was the presence of people willing to stand against danger, to make the hard calls, to take the impossible shots. And she was one of those people. Not because she wanted to be, because she needed to be, because the world needed people like her, people who could do what others couldn't, who could stand when others ran, who could make shots that mattered when everything depended on accuracy. She cleaned her rifle slowly, methodically, the way she'd been taught, the way she'd done 1,000 times before, the familiar motion calming, centering. Her phone buzzed again. Marcus. Heard you signed, proud of you, you're exactly where you should be. Elle smiled, typed back. Took me a while to figure that out. The best warriors always do. We think we want peace, but what we really want is purpose, and you found yours. She set down the phone, finished cleaning the rifle, set it carefully back in the safe. Tomorrow she'd train, run her property, check her skills, make sure she was ready for Kazakhstan, for whatever came next, for the missions that would define this new chapter. But tonight she sat on her porch, looked at the stars, thought about the path that had brought her here. From the girl who wanted to prove herself, to the SEAL who did, to the veteran who tried to escape, to the warrior who found her way back. Not to destruction, to purpose. And that made all the difference. Kazakhstan was cold. Not Montana cold, different cold, the kind that came off the steps and cut through everything, wind that felt personal, malicious, like the land itself was testing you. Elle stood on a ridge overlooking the target site, 300 meters below, old Soviet research facility, abandoned, officially, but the thermal signatures told a different story. Activity, recent, multiple heat sources inside buildings that should have been dead for 30 years. Agent Chen's voice crackled through her earpiece. What do you see? 4 buildings, main research complex, secondary storage, administration, power station. Elle adjusted her scope. Heat signatures in the main complex, at least 6, maybe 8, moving with purpose. Armed. Can't confirm from this distance, but the movement patterns suggest military training. They're maintaining defensive positions. Someone's on overwatch. Your assessment. Elle watched for another minute, studying, analyzing, applying 6 years of experience to patterns most people wouldn't recognize. This isn't amateur hour. These people know what they're doing. They've secured the perimeter, set up observation posts. They're not treasure hunters, they're professionals. Can you get closer? Not in daylight, they've got good sight lines. But tonight after the moon sets I can infiltrate, get eyes on, confirm what they're after." "Negative," Chen said. "We've got satellite confirmation. They're after the same thing Petrov's people were looking for in Montana, research-grade materials. This time it's plutonium, small amount, but enough." Elle felt her stomach tighten. Dirty bomb. Or worse, we intercepted communications. These people have connections, real connections, terror cells in 7 countries. They're not planning one attack, they're planning a campaign. "How long until backup arrives?" 18 hours. We've got a team inbound from Germany, but 18 hours is a long time. Long enough for them to finish whatever they're doing and extract. Exactly. Silence on the line. Elle knew what Chen was asking, not ordering, asking, because this was consulting work. This was optional. This was a choice Elle had to make herself. "What do you need?" Elle asked. "I need you to slow them down, make them think twice, make them careful, buy us time to get our team in position. You're asking me to engage 8 hostiles, alone, in a foreign country. I'm asking you to do what you did in Montana. Make them think they're not alone. Make them cautious. Make them defensive instead of offensive." Elle thought about this. Thought about risk and reward and the difference between smart tactics and suicide. "I can do that," she said finally, "but I need something." "Name it." "I need Thorn." Silence, then the Marine from Montana. "He's one of the best spotters I've ever worked with, and he knows this kind of operation. He's done it before, multiple times." Elle kept her eyes on the target. "I can slow them down alone, but with Thorn I can stop them completely." More silence. Chen was calculating, weighing protocol against results, bureaucracy against effectiveness. "He's a civilian," Chen said finally. "No clearance, no official capacity." "Then give him clearance, make it official. You want results, Agent Chen. I'm telling you how to get them." "Stand by." The line went quiet. Elle waited, watched the facility below, counted the heat signatures, estimated distances, calculated angles, running through scenarios in her mind, planning, preparing. 10 minutes later, Chen was back. "Thorn's been briefed. He's flying out of Great Falls in 3 hours. Military transport. He'll be on site by midnight." "Good." "Miss Blackwood, this situation is extremely volatile. If it goes wrong, if there's an international incident, you're on your own. No support, no extraction, no acknowledgement." "Understood." "And you're still willing." Elle thought about 20,000 people, 50,000 people, thought about the attack that didn't happen in Montana because she'd made 3 shots. "I'm willing." "Then good hunting." The line went dead. Elle settled into position, started the wait. The long, patient wait that defines sniper work. Not the shots, the waiting, the hours of absolute stillness, of watching, of preparing. The sun moved across the sky. Shadows lengthened. Temperature dropped. Elle didn't move, didn't shift, just watched, building a mental map of the facility, learning patrol patterns, identifying vulnerabilities. This was what she was good at, not the shooting. Anyone could learn to shoot, but this, the patience, the discipline, the absolute control required to stay perfectly still for hours while your body screamed at you to move. This was what separated good snipers from great ones. At 11:43, her earpiece crackled. "I'm 10 minutes out," Thorne's voice. Calm, professional, "give me a position." Elle provided coordinates. Thorne acknowledged, went silent. At 11:54 he appeared beside her, moved like smoke, like he'd always been there. Elle hadn't heard him approach, hadn't seen him coming. For a man in his 60s, Thorne still had it. "Hell of a view," he said quietly, settling into position beside her. "Hell of a target." Chen briefed me, plutonium, terror cell, international implications. Thorne pulled out his own spotting scope, just like the old days. "You miss it." Every damn day. Retirement is for people who don't know what they're good at. I know what I'm good at. Elle smiled despite herself. Let's show them. They worked in silence, the kind of silence that comes from professionals who trust each other. Elle called out observations. Thorne confirmed. They built a complete picture of the facility: guards, patrol patterns, weak points, kill zones. I count 8 hostiles, Thorne said finally. 4 inside the main complex, 2 on perimeter patrol, 2 on overwatch. That's my count. The overwatch positions are the key. Take them out, the rest will turtle up. They'll go defensive. That buys your team time. Long shots, 900 meters, maybe more. You've made longer. Not in wind like this. Thorne checked his instruments. Crosswind, 12 miles per hour, gusting to 15. Cold air, thinner. Bullet drop will be less than you'd expect. You sure? I'm sure. Trust the math. Trust your training. Elle settled into position. Found the first target through her scope. Overwatch position, north side of the complex. Man in tactical gear, rifle, professional stance. He was protecting his teammates, doing his job, probably believed he was doing the right thing. But the right thing and the actual thing were often different, and Elle had learned to live with that difference. Range 917 meters, Thorne said. Wind, cross left, 13 miles per hour. Temperature -7 Celsius. Barometric pressure standard. Elle made adjustments, calculated, breathed, slowed her heart rate, entered the zone where nothing existed except the shot. Target acquired, she whispered. Send it. She squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked. The suppressor muffled the report to a whisper. The bullet flew across 900 meters of Kazakhstan steppe. The target dropped. Hit, Thorne confirmed. Good kill. Second target, southwest overwatch. Range 864 meters. Elle found him, adjusted, breath squeezed. The second target dropped. Good kill, Thorne said. They know they're under fire now. They're going to ground. He was right. Elle could see the chaos through her scope. People running, taking cover, barricading doors, going from offensive to defensive in seconds. We just bought your team 18 hours, Thorne said. Maybe more. Elle kept her eye on the scope, watching, waiting for anyone stupid enough to expose themselves. Nobody did. The professionals below had learned their lesson. 2 men dead from impossible distances. They weren't taking any more chances. Now what? Thorne asked. Now we wait. We watch. We make sure they stay scared and defensive until Chen's team arrives. Long night ahead. Every night in this job is long. They settled in, 2 warriors, 2 generations, side by side on a frozen ridge in Kazakhstan, doing what they were trained for, what they were meant for. Hours passed. Dawn came, cold and gray. The facility below stayed quiet, locked down, defended. At 0700, Chen's team arrived. Black helicopters, tactical insertion, the kind of operation that looked smooth but was actually chaos barely controlled. Elle and Thorne watched through their scopes, watched the facility get breached, watched 6 hostiles get taken into custody, watched the plutonium get secured. Good work, Chen's voice in Elle's ear. Outstanding work. You bought us the time we needed. Just doing the job. We'll debrief at the extraction point. You and Colonel Thorne have an escort waiting. The line went dead. Elle and Thorne packed their equipment, started the long walk down from the ridge. I underestimated you, Thorne said as they walked. 8 months ago, at that town meeting, I looked at you and saw what I expected to see, not what was actually there. People do that. Doesn't make it right and it doesn't excuse it. He stopped walking, turned to face her. You're exceptional, Elle, not just skilled, exceptional, the kind of operator that comes along once in a generation. I learned from good teachers. You exceeded your teachers, that's what makes you special. Thorne smiled. Marcus would be proud, Hell, I'm proud. And I'm sorry it took me so long to recognize what should have been obvious from the start. Elle accepted this, not with words, with a nod, the kind of acknowledgement that passed between warriors who'd proven themselves to each other. They reached the extraction point, climbed into the helicopter, flew away from the frozen steppe, away from the facility, away from another mission completed. But Elle knew there would be more sights, more threats, more impossible situations that needed people willing to stand. And she was one of those people. Not because she wanted to be, because she needed to be. Because the world needed people like her. What waited at home, she never saw coming. 2 weeks after Kazakhstan, after the debrief, after the classified reports and the quiet congratulations from people she'd never meet, after everything went back to normal, or whatever passed for normal now. Elle was running fence lines on her property, standard maintenance, checking posts, looking for damage, the kind of mundane work that kept a ranch functional. She found the girl sitting on her porch. Young, maybe 22, dark hair, nervous energy, the kind of nervous that came from determination fighting against doubt. Emma Morrison. Elle had forgot, Saturday morning, 0600 training. She checked her watch, 0547, the girl was early. Emma. Miss Blackwood, Emma stood, military bearing, straight spine, shoulders back. I'm here for training if the offer still stands. Elle looked at her, really looked, saw the running shoes, the workout clothes, the water bottle, the commitment written in every line of her posture. The offer stands, but first tell me why. Why what? Why you want this? Why you want SEAL training? Why you want to put yourself through something designed to break you? Emma hesitated. Then, because I want to matter, because I want to do something that makes a difference, because I'm tired of being underestimated. Those are good reasons, but they're not enough. SEAL training doesn't care about your reasons. It only cares about your commitment. Elle stepped closer. So I'll ask again. Why? Emma met her eyes. Because I made a promise to myself that I wouldn't let fear or doubt or other people's expectations define what I can do, that I'd find out what I'm actually capable of, and that I'd push past that, past what I think is possible. Elle nodded slowly. Better, still not complete, but better. You'll figure out the rest during the training. So you'll help me. I'll prepare you. Whether you make it through Bud S is up to you, but I can give you the tools, the foundation, the mindset. Elle gestured to the mountain. 10-mile run, elevation gain 3,000 feet. You set the pace, I'll match it, we'll see what you're working with. Emma's eyes widened. 10 miles. Welcome to day one. It gets harder from here. They ran. Emma set a good pace, strong, determined. But by mile 3 she was struggling. By mile 5 she was suffering. By mile 7 Elle could see her questioning everything. But she didn't stop, didn't slow down, didn't quit. At the 10-mile mark Emma collapsed, breathing hard, legs shaking, but she'd finished. Good, Elle said, not impressive, not amazing, just good. Because the truth was it was just the beginning. You've got foundation, now we build on it. Emma looked up at her. How long did it take you to be ready for Bud S? 18 months of preparation, 6 months of Bud S, 2 years of advanced training after that. Elle helped her up. But I'm not you. Your timeline will be different, maybe shorter, maybe longer, depends on how badly you want it. I want it. Then come back next Saturday. Same time. We'll run again, and we'll keep running every week until you're ready, or until you decide this isn't for you. I won't decide that. Everyone decides that. At some point. The question is whether you decide it before or after you've given everything you have. Emma nodded, walked to her car, moved like every muscle hurt, which they probably did. Elle watched her drive away, felt that warmth again, legacy, passing forward what had been passed to her. Inside her phone was ringing, unknown number. Blackwood. Miss Blackwood, this is Director Chen. We have a situation. Moldova. Similar parameters to Montana and Kazakhstan. We need you. Elle looked at the mountain, at the peace she'd built, at the life she'd chosen. When? 48 hours. You'll have full team support this time. No solo operations. I'll need Colonel Thorne. Already arranged. He's your permanent spotter if you're willing to work together. Elle smiled. I'm willing. Excellent details incoming. And Miss Blackwood, thank you for stepping up, for doing what most people can't. Just doing the job, Director. No, you're doing more than the job. You're preventing catastrophes that would devastate families, communities, nations. You're standing between danger and innocent people. That's not just a job. That's a calling. The call ended. Elle sat down on her porch, thought about callings and choices and the difference between what you want and what you need. Her entire life she'd been fighting, fighting to prove herself, fighting to be respected, fighting to matter. But she'd been fighting the wrong battle. The real battle wasn't about proving herself to people like Thorne, wasn't about earning respect from communities that didn't understand her. The real battle was about standing, about being the person who could handle impossible situations, about making the shots that mattered when everything depended on accuracy. And she'd found that battle. Not in Montana, though Montana had tested her. Not in Kazakhstan, though Kazakhstan had refined her, but in the choice, the daily choice to stand, to prepare, to be ready when called. That was the battle that mattered, and she was winning it. Her phone buzzed, text from Emma. Thank you for training me. I won't let you down. Elle typed back. You can't let me down. You can only let yourself down, and I don't think you will. Another text, Thorne. Heard about Moldova, wheels up in 48, let's make it count. Elle stood, walked inside, started preparing her gear, the ritual that centered her, that reminded her who she was and what she'd become. Not the girl who'd been dismissed, not the seal who'd proven herself, but the warrior who'd found her purpose. And that purpose was clear now, brilliant, unshakable. Stand when others can't, make shots that matter, stop threats before they become catastrophes. Simple, direct, true. Outside, the sun set over Montana. The mountain turned gold, then red, then purple. Beautiful, peaceful, perfect. But Elle knew the truth. Peace wasn't the absence of danger. Peace was the presence of people willing to defend it. And she was one of those people. Not because she wanted to be. Because she chose to be. And that choice made all the difference. 2 months later, Copper Ridge held another town meeting. Elle walked in and felt the difference immediately. Not just respect, admiration. The kind of admiration reserved for people who have done things others can only imagine. The room quieted when she entered, not awkwardly, naturally, the way it quiets when someone important arrives. Sheriff Morrison approached. Elle, good to see you. Been quiet around here without you. Been busy. So I heard. Federal government sure seems to value your expertise. They value results. I provide results. Colonel Thorne was already there. Saved her a seat up front, not in back, up front, with him, with the legends. Miss Blackwood, he said as she sat down, how was Moldova? Successful, clean operation, no complications. I read the debrief. You made shots I wouldn't have believed possible. You taught me most of them. I taught you fundamentals, you made them art. The meeting started, standard business, but halfway through, Sheriff Morrison stood again. Before we continue, I want to recognize someone. Eleanor Blackwood has been providing crucial assistance to federal authorities. I still can't give details, but I've been authorized to say this. Her work has directly prevented multiple terrorist attacks. Not might have, has. Lives saved number in the tens of thousands. The room burst into applause, real applause, sustained. from people who understood at least partially what she'd been doing. Elle stood, acknowledged it, sat back down. After the meeting, people approached, not with questions, with thanks, with respect, with the kind of gratitude you give someone who's standing between you and danger you don't even know exists. A young woman stopped her on the way out. Not Emma, someone else, younger, maybe 18. "Miss Blackwood, I'm Sarah Chen, Agent Chen's daughter. My mom told me about your work, about what you've been doing." Elle blinked. She hadn't known Chen had a daughter. "She wanted me to tell you something," Sarah continued. "She said working with you has been the highlight of her career, that you're the kind of operator that restores her faith in what's possible. Your mother is exceptional herself." "She said you'd say something like that," Sarah smiled. "She also wanted me to give you this." She handed over an envelope, official, Department of Energy seal. Elle opened it. Inside was a letter and a medal, classified commendation, for actions in Montana, Kazakhstan, and Moldova, for preventing terrorist attacks, for exceptional valor. "She can't give it to you officially," Sarah said, "but she wanted you to have it, to know that your work matters, that you matter." Elle held the medal, small, heavy, not because of its weight but because of what it represented. Recognition, not from people who doubted her, from people who understood her. "Thank you," Elle said quietly. "Tell your mother thank you." Sarah nodded and left. Elle stood alone in the parking lot, holding a medal nobody would ever see, for actions nobody would ever know about. And she realized she didn't care. She didn't need public recognition, didn't need her name in papers, didn't need parades or ceremonies. She needed purpose, needed missions, needed to know that her skills mattered, that her choices made a difference. And they did. Emma Morrison approached. "Miss Blackwood, I've been training every day, following your program. How's it going?" "Hard, really hard, but I'm getting stronger, faster, more confident." "Good, keep pushing." "I wanted to ask, do you think I'm ready to apply for SEAL training?" Elle looked at her, really looked, saw the strength, the determination, but also the doubt, the fear, the uncertainty. "No," Elle said honestly, "not yet." Emma's face fell. "But you will be," Elle continued. "Give it 6 more months. Keep training, keep pushing, keep questioning whether you want it badly enough. Because if you can keep going despite those questions, then you're ready. If the questions make you stop, then you were never ready." 6 months. 6 months. Then we'll talk again. And if you're still committed, I'll write you a recommendation that will get you noticed." Emma straightened. "I'll be ready." "I believe you will." Colonel Thorne joined them, talking shop. "Talking futures," Elle said. "Emma wants to be a SEAL." "Then she's learning from the best." Thorne looked at Emma. "You listen to her. Do what she says. Miss Blackwood is one of the finest warriors I've had the privilege of serving alongside. If she's training you, you're already ahead of 90% of the people who'll try." Emma nodded, thanked them, left with renewed determination. "You're building something," Thorne said. "Legacy not just through missions, through mentorship. Someone built it for me. I'm just passing it forward." That's what the best warriors do. We don't hoard knowledge, we share it. Make sure the next generation is better than we were. They walked to their vehicles. The Montana night was clear, cold, stars brilliant overhead. "Got a call today," Thorne said. "Director Chen. Another site, this one's domestic, Nevada, but it's big, bigger than the others." "How big?" "Enough material for a dozen dirty bombs, maybe more. And intel suggests there's already a team moving on it." Elle felt her pulse quicken. "When?" "Next week. Full team deployment. You, me plus 6 specialists. This isn't reconnaissance. This is direct action." "I'm in." "Knew you would be," Thorne smiled. "You know what's funny? 6 months ago I thought I knew what a warrior looked like, what they sounded like, how they carried themselves. And now I know warriors come in all shapes, all sizes. What matters isn't how tall you are or how much you weigh. What matters is whether you stand when standing is needed, whether you make the shot when the shot counts. He looked at her. You stand, Elle. Every time, that's what makes you exceptional. Elle drove home, up the mountain, to the cabin that was no longer just a cabin but a base, a headquarters, the place she launched from and returned to. Inside, she prepared equipment, checked weapons, reviewed intel, the routine that had become her life. But it didn't feel like a burden, didn't feel like something she had to do. It felt right, natural, like she'd finally found where she belonged. Her phone rang. Chin. Miss Blackwood, Nevada briefing is scheduled for Monday. We're bringing in the full team. This operation is critical. I'll be ready. I know you will. You're always ready. That's why we count on you. The call ended. Elle sat on her porch, looked at the stars, thought about the path that had brought her here. From the girl who wanted to prove herself, to the SEAL who did, to the veteran who tried to escape, to the warrior who found her way back. But this time it was different. This time she wasn't proving anything to anyone. She was choosing purpose, choosing missions, choosing to stand. And that choice had made her free. Free from the need for validation, free from the weight of others' expectations, free to be exactly who she was meant to be. A warrior, an operator, a sniper who made impossible shots and saved lives nobody knew needed saving. The mountain was quiet, the stars brilliant, the night perfect. And a leaner Blackwood, 5'3", blonde hair pulled back tight, sat on her porch and smiled. Because she'd learned something important, something true. Legends aren't born, they're not given, they're not inherited. Legends are forged by choices, by shots taken when everything depends on accuracy, by standing when others run, by doing what needs doing no matter the cost. And Elle was forging hers, one mission at a time, one shot at a time, one choice at a time. The phone buzzed, text from Emma. 6 months, I'll be ready, thank you for believing in me. Elle typed back. I don't believe in you, I know you. There's a difference. Belief is hope, knowledge is certainty, and I'm certain you'll make it. Another text, Thorn. Nevada intel is impressive. This is going to be the operation that defines us, ready to make history. Elle typed back one word. Always. She set down the phone, walked inside, started the final preparations for Nevada, for the mission that would be bigger than anything she'd done, harder than anything she'd faced. But she was ready, had been ready since the moment she'd signed that contract, since the moment she'd chosen purpose over peace. Because peace wasn't the goal, purpose was. And she'd found hers. Outside, the Montana night settled into stillness, the kind of stillness that comes before action, before decisions, before moments that change everything. Elle cleaned her rifle one more time, the ritual, the meditation, the preparation that centered her. And in that stillness she made a promise, not to anyone else, to herself. That she would stand, always, no matter what, no matter the cost, that when the world needed someone willing to make impossible shots she would be there, ready, capable, certain. That was her legend, not built on size or gender or anyone's expectations. Built on choices, on shots taken, on missions completed, on lives saved. Built on standing when standing mattered most. And a leaner Blackwood stood. She always had. She always would. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts, and in the acting it reveals everything that words could never say.